Yo, yo, what up? What up? Good evening. Good day to you wherever you are watching this. Welcome. So glad to be here, and definitely glad to share this information. Share the game out. I have been tied up, but I am like super pressed to share this information with you and make sure that we all are well on our way to freedom, well on our way to creating the lifestyle that we want. What's up? What's up? What's up? I think Donnell just came in to creating the lifestyle that we want. This is like what I'm all about right now, and uh, just wanted to come in and give this game because first off, we don't realize that we might be sitting on money that we can access, that uh, is available to us, that might seem like, maybe we can't get it, or maybe it's not for us, but it's totally there. It's totally available, and definitely is something that we can take advantage of. So I want to make sure that we are aware of the information. This is the purpose of tonight, is to just start to share and to encourage you to say, okay, well, what does that actually look like for me potentially? You know, what does it look like to be able to access 100K or more, in business credit in particular? And that's really just the tip of the iceberg, when it comes to this thing, because there's other sources of funding, but we want to just open our minds to say, okay, look, if I run a business, if I'm investing, if I am, if you're tapped in with me, you're probably one that wants to both impact the world and live a life that's full and abundant, right? So this is what I want for everybody. In order to do that, there are ways to leverage, other people's money and other people's resources and other people's energy and other people's ideas, to be able to push this forward and to push your dream forward, right? So this is like, again, what's super important for me, which is why I wanted to come in and just jump right into it. So again, thanks to those of you who are tapped in. We're live. We're doing this thing dirty because I haven't used this platform before, but we're all good because we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and we're on Instagram, and definitely, is the first lesson, is you gotta just jump in, dive in sometimes. So speaking of which, I'll just give a quick background for those either that don't know or who aren't familiar or maybe have forgotten. But the reason I am here, the reason I'm doing this, is over the past 2.5, 3 years, I've been on a financial freedom, hot pursuit of financial freedom, and wanting to get there as quickly as possible, and as efficiently as possible, and to be able to blaze the trail and show other people how to do it as well. And a big part of that process is I stumbled across business credit, right? And I was able to use and leverage business credit to do all sorts of things in my journey, from real estate investment to joining different mentorships with very amazing people, and getting a ton of information to be able to invest and to grow and to invest in myself. So this is the crux of what I've done, and over the course of about 2 years, my wife and I generated over 500,000 in business credit, right? Over that period, and we've leveraged that in various ways, to be able to grow things, and to push things forward, right? So, and I see this question. I definitely appreciate this. Donnell was asking, how do we leverage business credit to invest, right? So definitely looking forward to touching back on that, because that's one of the things that I have done, and there are a ton of ways, and this is like a two-pronged approach, because one is just like knowing that this exists, because a lot of people just don't know, or maybe have heard of it but haven't really gotten into it, or don't know what's available to them. So it's just knowing that it exists, and then setting yourself up to actually get it. And then once you've gotten it, okay, what do I do to leverage this, to invest? Like, what are the ways, the strategies to go about this, right? So that's a really really critical part, and we will dive into that. So I will loop back around to the Donnell. So let's just start off, right? So are you sitting on 100K? So the concept is, a lot of us don't know, because I was in that place where I didn't know that I was sitting on 100,000, my first 100,000 in business credit, and had no idea, right? So I wanted to go over the ways that we're going to tell that, how you can look and check and make sure exactly where you are now. That's one of the things I want to walk away with from this particular workshop, is to say, okay, I have a clear idea of where I am and what one of my steps should be to be able to maximize my approach to getting business credit, and then taking that next step, right? So this is something that everybody should be aware of, because the cool thing is this is actually available to everybody, right? So we're going to talk about the prerequisites, the requirements, and stuff like that, but it is available to everybody. So either you are sitting on it right now and you have everything you need to get it, and you could start, tomorrow, next week, next month, or you are missing a couple of steps, but those couple of steps are going to take maybe 90 days. Those couple of steps are going to take maybe 6 months, right? What if it took 9 months, right? And you had to go through some things, and pursue some different avenues, and check some boxes. But in 9 months, you could have access to $150,000 that you could leverage for your business, or for investment, or for growth. Um, what about $250,000? What about 300,000? What about 500,000? What about a million? So all of that is actually possible, and at least getting started, that 100K is a mark that's very very possible, and we can talk about like how that is, right? So let's just run through that real quick. And I see the fam coming through. What's up, Ronnie? Appreciate you jumping in and popping in here. So first off, and I want to, maybe we can go to the board a little bit and see if this works out for us. But first off, how is this 100K possible, and what is it that we're talking about? There are a number of different avenues. There's not enough time to go through all of it, tonight. But let's go ahead and pull this up and see if this will work, right? So we're talking about 100K. So we're talking about credit stacking. Excuse my handwriting, just a blanket excuse, right? So credit stacking is the method that we're talking about, right? So how is this possible? We're looking at, once you are set up in the way that we're going to go over, right? As far as like what you need to prepare to have everything ready. Once you are set up, the strategy is we're going to be going after certain credit cards and lines of credit from different banks, and depending on if you have a business established or not, or if you're just starting out in your business, that might determine some of the strategy for what we're going to go after. But we're going after different credit cards, and basically each bank is going to pull one of the three bureaus, right? So let's say we have Experian, and most people are familiar with this on the personal side: Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, right? So we have those three. So, for example, if I go to a Chase card, right, and I get my Chase card first, the spoiler alert, that's the first bank that we're typically going to go to for a number of reasons. But let's say I get my Chase card first. We line everything up. This whole strategy that I'm about to say, but Chase pulls from Experian, right? So, and let's say that Chase gives me 25,000, whoops, 25K, right? Now, when I go to Bank of America, for example, right, as the next one, let's say in the same day, I apply for a Bank of America card. Now, this Chase is going to result in an inquiry on my personal credit. But if Bank of America is looking at TransUnion, right, B of A is looking at TransUnion, then they're not going to see this inquiry, right? Because they're just checking this TransUnion profile. So they look at it and see it as a blank slate, right? So they might give, let's just say, conservative. Let's just say they give you 15,000, right? And then what if we went to PNC, right? And this is just for the example purposes, but we went to another bank, PNC, and let's say that they pull from Equifax, right? So another bank, another bureau, and another blank slate that they see, and let's say they give you 15,000, right? Boom. So what is that altogether? We got 30, 55 already just from one bank from each bureau, right? So now what we're going to look at is the next we will do another bank from Experian, right? Now, typically we might do these all in a row, but we'll do another bank from Experian, for example, right? So let's say we have, uh, let's say it was FNBO, right? And so this is number one bank and number two bank. And FNBO, let's say we have another bank over here and another bank over here. And let's say, and I'm going to use some realistic numbers here. For me, I would say let's just say this is another 15,000, right? And this is being relatively conservative, right? And I'll say, hey, what about Truist? It's going to give you 25K, right? And let's say that, where are we? We're getting up there. Let's say that Amex, Amex is going to give you 20K. Now, this is before we implement any of these other strategies to leverage more things that if you watch my YouTube channel or anything else, you'll learn that there's more strategies to kind of get more than once. But just looking at this by itself, right? So where are we at? We need to get the calculator out just to make sure I don't mess anything up. So 55, 65, 70. That's 70K here, that's 95K here, and we're already at 115K, right? Just there. Now, we can actually do this with probably 3 more banks before we, um and then again, you might be sitting on 100K. This is how this quickly turns into more than that because, we can clear out these inquiries that came because any inquiry that's tied to a business, right, and that's not tied to your personal, anytime you get that inquiry, that can technically be removed from your report because it's not tied to an open account on your personal credit report. Now, just a quick review. Why is business credit so important? Because you have your personal credit, and if you run up your personal credit, then your score is going to go down the more you use of it, the more utilization you have. Let's say you have a $10,000 card and you use 9,000 of that. So the more that you use, the more risky that you look to the lenders, right? So your credit score is going to tank, right? And some of you have probably experienced that, where that credit score just jumps down right in the middle. But on the business side, the more that you use, it doesn't impact your personal score, right? Now we can have another conversation about the business side, the business score, but it doesn't impact your personal score. So you can leverage again, and we're going to get into this conversation based on Donnell's question, but you can leverage that 115,000 that we just said, and you can use 110,000 of it, 114,000. You can use all of it, and it's not going to affect your personal score. Right now, you do need to be careful. There are some business credit cards, and I'll just say like Capital One is one, for example. You have to be careful because they actually do report to the personal and business, right? So if you run that one up, then that one's going to report on your personal and your credit score will be impacted, right? So it's important to know stuff like that, but it's really really critical to say, okay, if I could leverage all of this money, right, to be able to invest or to be able to grow my business or to be able to do whatever the case, that's not going to impact my personal score at all, right? So I can use it, I can make money from it, and I can get it back. And now I'm just still growing, 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 right? So this is like really, really, really critical point, right? So that 100K, right? So you would think, like I said, am I sitting on 100K? Is this me possibly? Now let's go into how is that possibly you, right? So because this is just one round. Like I said, that was only 6 banks. We could have done another 3 before we got our inquiries removed, and there's different ways to do that. I have some contacts and things like that to do that, but we can get the inquiries removed and then run back and do that same exact thing again, right? With maybe 3 different credit unions and 3 more banks and 3 more credit unions, and run another 9, and then you can see how those things can add up. Now, I did not explain that some of these institutions, depending on how things are set up, you can get $50,000 on a credit card and 50,000 on a line of credit at the same time from one institution, right? From one hard pull, one hard inquiry on your credit report. So if you think about that, if you have the right setup that we're going to talk about right now, but if you have the right setup and you go there, you might be sitting on 100K from just one bank, right? And not to mention even this whole credit stacking strategy, you could just take that one lead and just tackle that and say, okay, I know I have this, right? Now, before we get right into it, one of the side questions is, okay, so as far as leveraging it, this is having a strategy is really, really important, right? This is why having a strategy is really, really important, because you need to know what are you going to do with these funds once you get them, right? Because it's for the purpose of investment, of entrepreneurship, of I want to put money out, and I know that I can get back double, I can get back triple, I can get back quadruple, I can get back 10x on whatever I put out. And if I can do that, then I've completely won, because now I've leveraged someone else's money to be able to grow my business, right? So what are some of the ways we can do that? We'll talk about that very soon, right? But let's talk. All right. So let's see. Are you sitting on 100K? All right. So let's go back to the board just because I'm feeling happy about it, right? So let's go back here. Are you sitting on 100K? All right. So there's 2 factors that we want to look at. Number 1, 100K. And I'm talking about like right now, right? Number 1 is your personal business, right? These are the 2 factors. So what do I mean? Your personal credit profile and your personal credit score is what we're going to talk about. And this is the thing that we can review today. This is going to be the action item from this workshop today, is to be able to check, okay, what is my personal credit score? A lot of people are familiar with that, but the thing that's more important to these lenders is your personal credit profile, right? We're going to talk about the difference in just a minute, right? And the other side is your business, right? So this is business credit. You have to have an LLC, right? And if you don't have one, you can start one. And don't fret if you don't have one. It's actually kind of an advantage, because you can start it off with certain things already in place and things lined up, so that once everything comes in, now you're just fully ready to go, right? And you can leverage whatever you're able to in that beginning stage. But if you have an LLC and maybe you've had one for a year, or you've had it for 2 years or longer than that, then you might be sitting on even more opportunity, because the longer a business has been open, the banks will prefer and prioritize those entities more, right? So you can get funding as a brand new business, but if you've been open for a while, or if you've been operating for a while, or even if the LLC has been sitting there and you had a bank account that's just open, even if you're not doing anything, that age does actually have some impact, right? So take a look at the personal and the business, right? So we need a score, and we need a profile, right? These are the things. So the score, this is pretty easy. And the score does kind of determine the profile, but it's not one and the same, right? So the score, we're looking at a 680 plus, right? This is the minimum that we want to be able to. If you have a 680 right now, they're more than likely you can have a good amount of access to be sitting on that 100K, right? So now the profile, I'm going to bring this up and let's just take a look, right? So this is the exact game. I'm just going to share it with you. Some people might withhold this information, but it is what it is. I want you to win, and win as quickly as possible. And I will go into why I care about that so much. But here it is. So what are we looking at, right? If you have Credit Karma, the scores on Credit Karma aren't always the most reliable, because really we want like the FICO score when it comes to like checking kind of where things are and stuff like that. However, Credit Karma is good at laying out this here that's on the screen on the left side. Oop, Donnell. Yep, you're in there, brother. He said, he said experience score 808. Yes, sir. You're in there. So you just might be sitting on 100 plus easy, right? So if you look at this on Credit Karma, they have a good summary, right? If you go to the credit tab, they have a good summary of what your profile looks like, right? So this is really important to be able to say, hey, how close am I or how far am I from this, right? So let's just go through it, right? So looking at it, your score is made up of these factors, but these are the factors that the lender is going to be looking at, right? So number one, payment history. Your payment history needs to be 100%. Right now, why is this so important? If you think about it, why would a bank give a brand new business money, 20, 25,000, 50,000, 80,000? You know what I mean? Sometimes on these credit cards, or 100,000 on a line of credit, like this, like real talk. One of my clients got 100,000 on just on a line of credit, just in one from one bank, one swoop. So why is it so important? Because they're basing the business on you as a person, right? Because business is made up of people until AI takes over our entire lives. Business is made up of people, right? So there's a person that's running the business, right? So how do you determine what the quality of the business is? It's probably the quality of the person that's going to guarantee it. So if the person can't pay back, right, or has any issues at all paying back, then that's going to be a red flag to me to say, okay, am I willing to give this person $40,000 if they can't give it back? And some people, and I'm saying this because from experience, and I had an issue where somebody made a mistake on my report, and it was like $12 or something like that that fell through the cracks. And one of the institutions, they didn't send a notification, and like the account was closed and all this other stuff. And I said, like, it's just $12. Like, this is not a big deal, right? But if you think about it from their side, it's like, okay, if you aren't serious about that $12, what does that mean? Are you going to be serious about the 20,000 that I just gave you? You know what I mean? When that turns into a hundred thousand, when you get into these big numbers, so you have to be really, really like a stickler for this, right? So, payment history, 100%, right? The credit card utilization, right? We want this utilization to be below 10%, right? And what does that mean? If I have, 5 credit cards that are 2,000 each, so I have a $10,000 limit, right? So that means that I need my credit card balances to be less than 1,000 to get the most ideal setup, right? To be sitting on this money. So the next tier is 30%, right? So if you're below 30%, so in that $10,000 example, if you have $3,000 on your personal credit cards, then you can still be in the game, but they're going to be limiting you based on some of these factors, right? Now, derogatory marks. Third, we want 0 derogatory, no derogatories, and we want 100% payment history. So obviously, you can see here on the right. This is the game here. So if you want to just note this down now, note it down, right? Because this is you'll be on the way here, right? So looking at the payment history, 100%. Hard inquiries, 2 or less. Remember on that screen that I showed you with the banks, right? About the hard inquiries. And thank you so much, Melissa. Appreciate you jumping in. Let's get this game in, right? So the hard inquiries. So I mentioned that each time you get one of those banks to give you a card, they're going to do a hard inquiry, right? And each time you apply for anything, right? If you've been following your credit report at all, if you apply for an auto loan at the wrong place, they might put 15 inquiries on your profile, right? So they can come from anywhere, whether you got something or whether you didn't. So the more inquiries you have, the more risky you're going to look, right? To the banks, that looks like you're looking for money. So when we go to them, ideally we want to have nothing on there. But if you do have anything, we want 2 or less, right? 2 or less hard inquiries, and that's going to be across the board, and that's going to set us up for the most success, right? Now, if you do have, here's the spoiler alert too. Don't fret, right? Either, like I said, either you're sitting on 100K right now, and you can take the step to like go for it right now, or you're just a few tweaks away, right? So any of this stuff can be addressed. The most important thing is going to be start today. If you start today, and I'm just recognizing that this is quarter two, right? So the time is flying, right? I don't know if anyone else feels the same, but the time is flying, right? So if you had started January 1, and like I said, a lot of these things you can fix a good amount of stuff in 90 days with the right approach if you're connected with the right people. And a realistic one is probably 6 months. Sometimes, like I said, even if it takes 9 months. But if you had started January 1st, for example, imagine where you would be right now. You might be sitting on that. So it's a mindset thing to say like, okay, my stuff isn't right, or it's never been right, or it's, I don't know how to do this. You can take a step today in that direction. And that's exactly what I want to empower us to do like right now. Right. Utilization, right? Below 10%, no derogatories. Now our total accounts, we want 10 or more total accounts. Right now, what are these accounts? These are considered like primary accounts with your name, right? And this is either credit cards, like revolving accounts, credit cards. This is also loans, right? Student loans, auto loans, anything that's an installment, like a fixed payment, and you pay it over time, and also like things that change over time, but they're consistent. So like your cable bill, or like your electric bill, your utilities, or anything like that. You want to have all of those reps because they want to see that you can handle all of those different types, right? And have more than 10 accounts altogether, and those 10 are made up of that mix of some sort, then you're in the game. Now, most people, you have a home, or if you had a student loan, or if you have a car, and if you have a couple credit cards, then you're good to go, right? Now, if you don't have that, again, there are things to do to be able to build up quickly to this place so that you'll be ready to get into that money. All right. So, and then lastly is the credit age. So the credit age, we want that to be 5 years or more, right? At least. The extension would be like maybe 3 years. You can still be in the game, but that means that like if I have a credit card, from 10 years ago, and then have another credit card from 5 years ago, just the rough math says, okay, if I have two cards, my average age is going to be 7.5 years. So I have a 10-year and I have a 5-year. Right now, so one gem about this that I will just share is if you don't have, and we can go back to the board, right? So um, if you don't have that utilization, or if you don't have that credit aid, there's something you can do called trade lines. Trade lines, right? Now, there's a few ways to do this, and what a trade line is basically is and I know I see some people that are on this call listening right now that offer this. So this is like very, very available, right, to all of us. But what a trade line is like an authorized user, right? So you might have been added from your parent, or maybe you had a child that you added, or maybe a cousin or something like that. For whatever reason, at some point you added as an authorized user, or maybe like an employee or something. But when an authorized user is on a card, there are certain attributes that get transferred to that authorized user's credit report. Now, the two most important ones, you can't just add a bunch of authorized users and the bank looks at you and says, oh, you have all this credit and now you're good to go. But what it can do for sure is it can affect your utilization and your age. Right. So if you don't have, let's say, let's just run a quick math here. Right. I'm gonna challenge my brain to do this. Right. So let's say that you have $10,000, $10,000 limit. Right. And our goal, if you remember, and somebody, even though I can't hear you, but somebody say, what was our goal for utilization? I'm gonna just give a second for you to just spit that. You want to know these things in your head, right? So our goal is 10%. Right. So that means at 10% utilization, our goal is $1,000, right? So $1,000. But let's say that my balance is at $2,000, right? I had a nice Christmas. It was too nice, right? And I've got more balance on my cards than I usually have, and I've got $2,000. So now I'm actually at 20%. I'm actually at 20% utilization, right? So I want to get down below 10. Now you can pay those things down. That's probably the best way to do that. But the other thing that you can do is what if you added another $10,000 credit card, right? From, let's just say, from me. Say, Kyle, I want one of your trade lines, right? So I have a card that's $10,000. I'm going to put you on it for 60 days. And during that 60 days, it's going to report to your credit report. And that utilization overall is going to report to your utilization. So now, instead of 10,000, my 10,000 is added to yours. Now you have 20,000 total. And guess what? You had 2,000 as your balance. So now we are at 10%, and now you're good to go, right? So, um, thinking about how powerful that is, right? So if you had everything else but your utilization was off, I will say roughly, if you wanted to buy that trade line, that might be 500 between 500 and $1,000, right? To buy that trade line and that was the only thing you needed, that would be great. Now the other hack that you can do is if you have a family member, right, that you trust, that using a credit card, or not using a credit card for years, or just always use it and pay it off, and it's old as dirt, and it's just sitting there, you can just have them add you to it and have the same effect, right? So this is available to all of us again, which is why this is so powerful because either you can do it and you can get it directly, or you can pay for it, or you can just have somebody add you, right? So the other thing, this is the same thing with age. So let's say again, what was the average age that we want, right? Somebody just again say it in your head, say it out loud, say it in the chat. The average age, the minimum ideally is 5 years, right? So let's say I got a couple cards recently, and maybe I have this mortgage and I have these other things, but the overall balance is going to be like 2 years or something like that, right? So if my age is 2 years, right, and let's say I had a couple cards, and you have to do the math on this to make this make sense, but I think you guys can get this. But if my age is 2 years, then I'm going to add. Let's say I have a card that's 10 years old. Yep. So you buy my trade line, you get my 10 years added to your 2 years, right? So depending on how many cards, that could easily combine up. Let's say it was like 6 years or something like that. So now your average age is above the threshold that we need, and now you're suddenly good to go, right? So you want to think about trade lines, right? So I will share one little side nugget just right here in the middle for those of you that are tapped in here. Again, I appreciate everybody being on, and I appreciate the comments and the love and everything. Um, but one more gem, right? So if you think about this, if you can buy this trade line from someone else, if you have credit cards that you rarely use, that are in good standing, that have been open for a long time, that are old as dirt, you can also sell those trade lines to other people to do the same thing, right? So I'll just share this briefly, right? So, and I said it's not unreasonable for that card, like say you had a $10,000 limit, or say that the card's been open for 10 years, that's very valuable to somebody, right? Because if that could be the only thing stopping somebody from getting access to 100K, that would be really, really important for their entire future, right? So let's say on one card, right? So they pay $500, and that's for 2 months, right? So that $500 for 2 months, but then um, the card, like let's say Chase, for example, they let you add up to 10 authorized users, right? But let's say we were being conservative, or played it in the middle. Let's say you had 5 authorized users. And Donnell, this is kind of getting to your question about leverage, but this is like leveraging your personal credit actually, because you need the personal credit to get the business credit. But while it's sitting there, you're not using the personal credit because I got this business credit and now I'm using it. I can leverage the personal in this way, right? Potentially. So let's say I had 5 authorized users on Chase. So I get 5 different people. Now, how much is that to just add somebody onto the account? for 60 days. They don't use it. They don't use the card at all. They don't do anything, right? It's just there. You use it, buy a stick of gum, and then and that's it, just so it'll report. But after that 30-day hits and after that 60-day hits, take them back off. What is that? That's $2,500, right? From one card, cash flow, potentially, right? And let's say even if you leverage somebody else, like if I found somebody for you and you had it and say, hey, I have these cards, but I don't know how to do this or where to do it, right? And let's say it was even $200 like commission per card. If you did that times five, that would be another $1,000, right? And what if you did that every 60 days? That's that's not bad for not having to do anything extra, right? Just adding somebody receiving the card to your address and then taking them off in 60 days. So just a little a side benefit, right? So next, right? So we looked at the personal, right? Are you sitting on 100K? We looked at the personal, and now we're going to look at the business, right? So from the business side of things, what is it that you need, right, to be set up to know, like, am I sitting on 100K? Now, this is your compliance. Now, what does that mean? Is basically how good do you look to the banks, right? As a business, does it look like a legitimate business that is not going anywhere for a while? All right, this is number two. So if you have this, it's a good chance you might be sitting on 100K. If you don't have it, then you can be, because you can build this up and create this, right? So, uh, legit business. You can probably logically think through these things and make them make sense. But number one is, it seems simple, but do you have a website, right? And does the website look like the website of a business, right? Um, are you registered? So that's a basic one, right? Are you registered with the state, right? You have your articles, you have your EIN, right? Now this is a critical one, a business address. Now I will tell you now that there are ways to get the funding with both a home address and a business address. And when I say home address, like your home address is listed as the business address, right? Now, if you want the max funding possible, then you want to have that business address, right? And what is this? It's typically going to be a virtual address unless you have a storefront or like a physical location. If you have a physical location, then great, right? That's not everybody, but if you have that, again, sitting on 100K, you might just be sitting on this additional money because having a physical location is, in the eyes of the banks, seen as more favorable, right? So, but you can get a virtual address. And one thing I will encourage about that real quick is, for the virtual address, you want to make sure that this thing is not like a PO box, not um, a Staples. There's some companies out there you can get a virtual address from, but it's a random PO box inside of a 7-Eleven or something like that. And you can get your mail there, and it's all good. But the banks are going to look up this information, right? So they're going to look up, what is the address? What does this look like? And does this look like an office building? Or does it look like a box, a mailbox? Now, since COVID happened, they were a lot more lenient when it came to home addresses. So it is very, very possible to get a good amount, and definitely, like you said, sitting on that 100K, you can definitely do the home address and get away with it. It's just you might be limiting yourself in the future, right? Right. So, great question on that. So UPS store is also in the middle ground, almost like home address. I know people that have done UPS store and gotten away with it, and it's been fine. There are certain institutions that look, and if you have a UPS store as your business address, then they will frown upon that and either severely limit what they get you, or they might deny, right? That doesn't mean you can't go to other institutions and still work it out, but we're just talking about what works versus what's the max that you can get, right? So UPS store again, I would put that in the middle. Appreciate that. So again, so what else are we looking at here, right? So website, right? Are you registered? You have an address, a business phone number. And ideally, this is a similar thing, but toll free is the max. Toll free, 1-800-1866, right? And I actually have a checklist that, if you want, I can share the link, right, to this checklist that kind of shows these are the things that I want to have in order to be lined up for this, right? So a toll free number. Now, if you have a full transparency, most of what I've gotten has been using just a Google Voice number, right? Google Voice number. It's got a local number, but it is a business number. It is separate, and I was able to get a good amount. There's been there's been times though where I've run into some roadblocks because I can't use this Google Voice number because they don't accept it, right? In certain places or in certain applications or with certain things, but it's gotten me a long way, right? So there are some other options to be able to get a business number that's legit, right? Now, this is another one is when you have that website is also going to give you a business email, right? So we don't want a Gmail or Yahoo or anything like that. And one of the reasons is the bank is going to look at you again. It's like pay to play. The more that you are paying, the more likely you are to be sticking around as a business. If you're just using all the free resources, it kind of looks like this is just your personal thing. You're not really serious about this. You could close it tomorrow and not bat an eyelash. So it's just like one of those little things, right? So your business email, you want your name or info at such and such.com, right? So again, this is going to be looking like a legit business, right? Now, one more little gem I'll throw in there is 411. So is your business listed on 411? Right? And let me see if there we are. Is your business listed on 411? Now you're going to go to list yourself, and I have this in a checklist. Listyourself.net. Listyourself.net, and you can register your business on 411 for free, right? And the reason that this is critical is you have to have all this business information needs to line up across all platforms, across all things. So the state, the address on the state, the address on your EIN from the IRS, the address that shows up in Dun and Bradstreet, the address that shows up, wherever on Google. We want it to line up, right? And this is a great point again. I know a great point. I didn't know. I had no idea 411 was still around, right? Technically, it's not, but it is a website that lenders still use to see if this business showing up in the local area or in the national area or whatever the case. So it's like an online registry now that is still a thing, right? So again, which is why it's important to know this stuff, to know like what is it that they're looking for, you know, um, to be able to position yourself in the best way possible. Right now, some additional ways that are just kind of bonuses, but that makes sense given what we're talking about is, are you listed on Google, right? On Yelp? Do you have Google reviews, right? So these are some things that if you're imagining you're in that seat from the other side and you're looking up and saying, okay, is this business legit, right? Um, those are the types of things that you could possibly look up to see, like what's going on with this business. You're going to look at the website, and they're not going to spend a ton of time on this, which is why if you have it in a basic way, looking clean and looking nice, you're good to go, right? Now, one more gem that I've shared on the YouTube channel, and if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, definitely subscribe and stay tapped in with this information. But one thing that you want to be mindful of is your business um, type does actually matter with the institutions, right? So For example, there are certain industries that they consider risky. So if you're in like real estate, or if you're in trucking or anything like that, or if you're doing like financial services or like gambling or something, they're going to look at you less favorably. And either they would severely limit what they give you, or they would just deny you outright, depending on the institution. So there's one institution that I am connected with that they just told me outright, like, yeah, if the business is in real estate, like that's not, we just don't do it, right? So if you are doing things that are related to real estate, the thing is, if you position your business as, like, say you're consulting, right? Because you might be doing certain things, but there might be situations where you are consulting other people's business, or other people are sharing information, things like that. So if you're positioning as, okay, this is what I do for people as a consulting, or this is what I do as a marketing, this is what I do as like one of those industries that's more generic and more favorable to the banks, then now you're good to go, right? So the website, everything can be as generic as possible. Some people go as far as even having like a separate website directly for this process and for getting funding. That's like a very generic. The name is generic. Everything just seems like very, very bland, right? But bland does seem like it lasts a long time, which is why it's more attractive, right? So if you, depending on what you're doing, again, this may not be a big deal for you, but it is something to think about, because we're talking about what can you get as far as just starting, versus if I want to go for the maximum, then this is what I do, right? So I want to take a pause, right? So I hope this information has been helpful so far, to be able to say, okay, this is, we kind of shared a lot of stuff, but this is not necessarily that far fetched. And some of you watching might be like, okay, yeah, I got all of that. I've had all of that for a couple of years. You know what I mean? Like, no problem. That means you are officially sitting on 100K. You are officially sitting on it, and it's out there for you, and you are not accessing it, and you're not leveraging it, right? So before we go to some questions, and before I come back to some of the things that were brought up earlier, I do want to kind of give you what are some of those next steps, right? So number one is, I want everybody to make sure that you have checked your your personal credit. Check your personal credit, because this is going to be the linchpin for everything else. So if you don't have Credit Karma, get Credit Karma and get that screenshot that I shared, right? And I'll put this up one more time, right? Get that screenshot that I shared and compare that with these standards, right? And if anything is off, right? If your payment history is off, maybe you have some derogatories, then we need to be looking at like credit repair. Or if you have a bunch of inquiries, you might need to look with a professional to say, okay, are any of these some that I can like potentially get off, right? And work through that process, right? There are ways to fix a credit report and to uh, change what's on there, especially if it's incorrect or anything like that, or even if it is a legitimate thing. There are laws in place that sometimes it's not lawful for them to report on your credit report certain things, right? So there's like a ton of legitimate ways to go about actually repairing and fixing like your credit. So that is something that you can tackle, right? Like we said, if you're looking at something that's, hey, my utilization is off, or my credit age is off, or I need some more accounts, then that's a different, somebody to go in and to say, okay, well, guide me through this process of what is it that I need to add, right, in order to get to this place, right? So I want everybody to pull your Credit Karma, right? That's a free resource. And if you want to take the next step on, okay, I don't have anything like monitoring my credit, like for real. So inside of the checklist that I can share out, inside the checklist is going to be the credit monitoring software, right? And you can get a 7-day pass for $1, and then it's probably like $30 a month right after that. And to me, it's been worth it. I've been using it for a long time, just to keep eyes and tabs on where's everything in my credit report. And that's going to give you like all your FICO scores, so you can see like what are the lenders looking at, what they see when they pull my stuff. And then you can track the process as you're making moves and different things, am I still lined up? Am I still good to go? Right? So pull your Credit Karma, um, and you wanna also, make sure you check your business, right? So if you do have a business that's open, just kinda double check the list, right? Because even if your business has been, like, legit for a while, if you don't have those things in place, then you might be undercutting yourself. It might be just a few small tweaks just to get things set up. Now, if you don't have a business or you're thinking about starting a new LLC, if you start with the foundation, now you're good to go. Now combine these 2 and that example that I gave about what we can pursue with the business credit, all that is totally possible for you, right? Now, a few ways that you can go about it, and I've shared this before, but number one, I would just encourage, right? So if you know exactly what you would do, right? If I gave you $100,000 and you know exactly what you would do to turn that into 200,000, to turn it into 300,000, to turn it into a million, whether that's through your business or otherwise, through investment or through, whatever thing you might do, then I would say you want to go for the max that you can get, right? Now, the max that you can get is typically going to cost like the going rate for the max that you can get is going to be about 10%, right? So if you get 100,000, right, the company is going to charge you 10% as a success fee, and that might be 10,000, but typically you can pay that 10,000 on, and this is going to be a 0% card, right? So you can charge the 10,000 fee to the 0% card, and now you have this initial balance, like your startup fee, basically, initial balance on that 0% card, so you're not paying any interest on it. You just have the monthly principal payment, which is typically like 1% of whatever that is, right? So if you're making your moves, now the question is, could I leverage $90,000 to not only make back this 10,000, but to turn that into a lot more? If you know that in your head, like, yes, I could do that. I know exactly what I would do. I would say go for that because this method, with some of the people that I know and some of the things that I'm tapped into and the things that I do, we would be looking at, okay, you might be able to get 300,000, right? You might be able to get 400,000, 500,000, right? So again, if I give you $450,000 to leverage and you know exactly what you would do with it, say like that would be amazing. I would do this, this, and this, blow this up, and hire this person, and and we're going to talk about that very, very soon, just before we wrap up. But I would say go for that, right? If you're not sure, the other option that I have used and that is kind of beneficial is this flat rate option, and I can share the link if you're interested in that. But basically, you're going to pay you're going to pay a one-time fee, right, for a year of funding, and the company will go and walk through with you, and they'll get as much funding as they can for you in that year. But typically, the amounts are going to be a little bit lower than what you would get going that other route, and the time it's going to take is going to be probably a bit longer, right? So if you're thinking about I want higher and I want faster and I'm willing to pay for it, then go for that. If you're thinking that okay, I want it less expense and I'm okay with getting a little bit less and I'm okay with it taking a bit longer, then this flat rate option might be a good deal for you, right? And again, if you're tapped into the channel, I also shared a video where I talked about how my wife and I both leveraged our business credit with this particular program because this company will also fund a spouse, right, at the same time for you. So now, again, I hope all of this was helpful. I hope you feel inspired, at least to be able to say like, okay, this is possible for me, or like, okay, now I'm starting to itch because everything you said, Kyle, I have all of that. Like, I got everything. So that means like you're ready to go, so that this money should be available to you yesterday, and we need to tap in and get started, right? So that's what I would say as far as next steps. If you need to reach out to me, you should know how to do that. Tap in with me on any of the channels YouTube and Instagram, and Facebook, or wherever else that you might be watching this. But tap in with me, and I'll get you some next steps on what you can do. But if you can take some of these steps that we talked about, you can set that stuff up and start working on it. Um, it's definitely a good place to go. And one thing I would advise before you start applying for anything, make sure you have a strategy, because those inquiries and the timing actually does matter. So if you can go in with a stacking strategy, then you can say, okay, I'm going to hit all this at one time. Everything's lined up. I know what I'm doing, and this is what we're doing with like clients recently, right? So now, on the other side, so let's touch back on this very, very important question. Again, I appreciate those of you that have been watching and checking things out. But the question was, how do we leverage business credit to invest? And if you have any other questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll see if we can get to those. Right. So, but how do we leverage business credit to invest? Right. So some of the things that come to my mind. Right. So we're talking about, I have additional funds, right, to be able to use that were not mine initially, right? What do I do? What do I do to invest? So this could be a number of things. The first thing I think of, and we want to think about speed, right? So we want to think about speed. And what's up, Aaron? Good to see you, man. I see you up on Instagram, man. So we want to think about speed, right? So speed, because on these cards, this is not the end of the world, but on these cards, we're looking at a 0% interest, typically for 12 months, right? So while you could leverage that 100K, right, into a long-term real estate buy and hold, right? But you're going to start paying interest once that 12 months ends. You're going to start paying interest on that money in 15% if you're lucky with one of the good ones, up to 28%. Now, if you're watching my channel, then you'll see the nugget that I shared about how you can extend that 0% period. Or actually, I think this video is about to drop soon. But we can extend that period almost indefinitely with a couple interesting and cool tricks. But this is the way I would think about it, right? So we want to think about what's something I can do quickly. So if within that same 12 months, instead of a buy and hold, if I did a flip, now the flip, if all goes well, and if you're worth your salt, ideally, your flip takes 6 months. And if you're like me and have gone through the ringer, that 6 months turned into a year plus, right? But let's say it was planned for 3 months and it took six, you would still be in that 0% period, and you can technically leverage this into, if you get an SBA loan, right? SBA loan is 10%. I can get have 100K, I leverage that 100K, and I get an SBA loan of 10%, but I get a million property for what right? If you make the right moves, I can leverage that $1 million business that's going to cash flow me, 10,000 a month. This is a whole nother thing, Donnell, right? As far as how do I leverage this to invest? Because there are people that I know that you can buy other businesses, right? So not even just real estate, but I purchase the business and I do the business with the SBA loan, and now I can leverage that into that. Right now, the other ways that I would think about is mentorship. Right, this is a critical one, because to me, you can get access to anybody in the world, right? A good amount of anybody in the world. The highest high ticket, in general, roughly, I would say between 10,000 to 40,000, right? And some of us, like I said, I've definitely used this, and I am in the room with high level people, because of this business credit, right? So on a normal day, 10,000 to 40,000 might be like, what in the world? Like, where am I gonna get that from? But if I have 300,000 in business credit, and I know I can leverage this mentorship to be able to, and this is the key question for yourself, to be able to convert, and I convert that into 100,000 in profit. right? Based on the information that I'm receiving, based on the game that I'm getting, right? Am I able to leverage that? Then mentorship is the shortcut, right? So I would definitely want to use uh, business credit for that because now I can fast track my way and eliminate all the mistakes instead of having to search on YouTube only and YouTube University and all that different stuff and making different mistakes. But if I identify the right person, and case in point, I know one of my mentors, Eric Thomas, was looking to write a bestseller, a New York Times bestseller book, and he went to a particular person who specializes in doing that. And the jury is out on the specific number, but the way I remember the story is this thing cost $30,000 for the program, right? And I think he might have paid even less than that, but $30,000 and whatever months of work, and got him to that New York Times bestseller, which the 30K. After that, he was then able to charge 200K per speaking gig, right? So if you think about it, this investment, if he had used business credit, could have been $30,000, not only $30,000 at 0%, right? For however many months it took to do the program. Now he can charge 200K per speaking engagement, but that $30,000 also just on the side having to get points because when you spend it on the credit card, now you get $30,000 worth of points, right? And roughly that would at least convert into 300, but depending on how you do it, maybe you have a sign-on bonus, maybe you have all these other things. There's a whole other game to be able to leverage that, right? Those are the two that I would start with is, right? So speed, if we're investing, think about speed, right? One of my investments that I share with the people in my mentorship is in the trucking industry, and it's a very, very hands-off investment, right? And you can do that, and over the course of 9 months, you're going to get fixed payments like clockwork, right? And this we're talking about like not 8 to 10% return. We're talking about like 15%, 18%, 20% return, right? 25% return on that. So, and that might be something because of the time frame and when you can expect to get it back. That makes sense, right? Now, the last thing I would say is expansion. And part of my my fast method, right? That I'll be glad to share later. But these are the ways to leverage it once you get it, right? And I have to go through this real quick, but I would say the other one is you're expanding yourself through hiring investment, right? And the easiest one is, I would say, virtual fixed assistants, right? To be able to give someone a job who can work very, very hard and produce a lot of great results, high quality, and for where they live, the cost might not be as much as it would cost to get the same level of talent, say here. So you can leverage that. And now, if I could, let's just say roughly, it was $1,000 a month, right? 1K a month for a super high level person who could just blow up my social media, right? They'll just take it on completely, $1,000 a month. So what I'm saying is for a year of a social media person that's just going to dive into that and completely blow it out the water for me, right? So that means $12,000, right? I can have a person for 1 year to really, really dominate this area. Now, if I just got a card for 25,000 and another one for 50,000 and another one for 15,000, guess what? That $12,000 doesn't have to come out of my pocket. I just do it with that. Right? So that's the next thing I would do, right? Now, last and one of the most important that probably should be first is infinite banking, right? And this just the concept, I would say, if you're not familiar with it, definitely look it up. But basically, what we're saying is we're leveraging life insurance, right? Whatever you put into this policy, is not only tax-free, right? You can withdraw from the policy, and the amount that you put in is still getting interest as if you never took it out, right? This deserves a whole another workshop. So maybe we should just put a date on the next one, right? But the the amount that I withdrew, sorry, that I took a loan, you're taking a loan from the policy. So the amount that I took the loan on from the policy, the original amount is still gaining interest as if I never took it out. And then I can invest what I took out as the loan into other things, but you can't get taxed on a loan. So when I take this loan out, this loan that I took is also tax free, right? So there's a whole other, consult your everybody, your attorney, your CPA, but I'm telling you this information is real and exists, right? So infinite banking is going to be the next thing that you want to look at to say, if I do this first and I run that 100K, and there's ways to do this, you want to do this strategically. But if I run that 100K, for example, through the infinite banking policy first, right? Now that 100K is growing permanently for the rest of my life and generations after me at conservatively 8%. Let's just say it was 8%, right? So now that 100K is making me money, and then I can now probably immediately take a loan for at least 80,000. And there are ways to get there are ways to get more, to get access to the full amount, and there's different levers and things like that. But let's say I can do 80,000. Now, the question for you again, do you have the ideas, the execution, the resources to turn this 80,000 into 160, right? Can you double it? Can you 10x it? If you can do that, then you do that. And now when you pay back this loan, you're actually paying yourself back, right? I'm paying myself back. So there is interest that's charged, but the interest is going towards the pot that is, ultimately, uh, you're paying yourself back for that loan, and then you can borrow from it again. The crazy thing is, again, this is a whole nother topic, but the crazy thing is you can actually, even if you don't pay back that loan from life insurance, it just gets deducted from whatever your death benefit is. So that means that when you die, the amount that gets paid out to the beneficiaries is just going to be less by that amount. So technically, you don't ever even have to pay it back. Crazy. This is IUL. Yes, Donnell. IUL, right? And there again, you want to be tapped in with the people that understand this stuff, because there are ways and there are reasons to use whole life, to do this strategy. Some people tout one, some people tout the other, but the concept is probably one of the most important, right? To just say, okay, I'm going to leverage this concept. But if you can do that first and you have the means and the ideas to execute, this is where all this stuff wraps up, is what can I execute on, right? If I had the money, then I would do this, this, and this. If you can't answer that question, then there's probably a mentorship angle, or there's something that you would be able to leverage to invest in yourself, or to invest in something that's like a sure bet, with business or with investment or whatever the case, to be able to do that. But if you know that for yourself, like, I have a business, and I would do this, this, and this, and grow it in this way. This is something that we want to take advantage of. And again, the power of just the example that I used of just that 100K. The 100K is the floor, right? 50K is like butter, easy, right? If you have this stuff lined up, you get access to that 50K, but definitely that 100K to start. And then when we talk about doing multiple rounds, that can quickly turn into 200, quickly turn into 250, quickly turn into 300. And if you add the spouse, like I talked about in my previous video, but if you add the spouse, now we're talking about, we can maybe double that under the same household with two different LLCs. Or if you have another LLC, you can fund multiple LLCs kind of with the same person. There's so many different ways to do it. But the thing I want you to walk away with today is, am I sitting at 100K? You know that? Am I sitting on 100K? Right? And when I say sitting, like this is like literally just there, and I'm not accessing it because I just didn't know that I could. So now you know. If you watch this, now you know. Now you know what to check, right? And once you've checked it, and if you need to talk with somebody to check, if you reach out, you know what I mean. We can talk through. You can work with me. You can work with somebody else. I just want you to have the information and make sure you are taking steps towards that. Why? Because I care so much about freedom. I care so much about the freedom of everybody because life is not promised, right? And unfortunately, um, I experienced this in a real way recently because, one day I was just in my dining room the other day and I realized, man, this is the place that I had the last meal with my dad before he left town, and I never had another meal with him again because, like, just like that, he was gone. His health was fine. Everything seemed normal. One day he was here, the next day he was gone. Because last year, right? And it's a reminder we all go through these things, but it's that reminder of, okay, life is not promised, right? So if life is not promised, only get one life, and not only just my life, but the people around me, loved ones, and not even just my living life, but something could happen that could just take me off of, now I have to focus in this area, or maybe I get injured in this way, or maybe I have to start taking care of someone. The life as you know it is not promised, right? So we have to take action as much as possible right now to be able to take advantage of these things that are here for us. And these things that we're talking about are here for everybody if you just know the steps and can position yourself in it, right? So this is why I encourage you to take whatever is that next step for you. Is that next step, I need my credit repaired? Is that next step, I need to start an LLC? Is that next step, I need to build my credit profile to make it look better and be more juicy? Is the next step, I need to kind of round out my LLC and just get some of these basic things in place? I didn't have a website, I didn't have a business email, I didn't have a business address. I might need to call the IRS and make some of these changes and wait a month while this stuff posts. But once I'm there, is your next step, okay, I need to touch base with somebody that can give me this strategy, or I need to, Kyle, give me the ebook so I can run through it and do it myself. You know what I mean? It's just run through the steps, or do I want somebody to hold my hand and like walk me through this and do this straight out? So that's what I would encourage you to take a look at, as soon as possible, and know that this future is right here for you. It's right here for us. We just have to grasp it, and again, to be able to leverage it to say, how am I maximizing this life while I have it? And I hope if you are tapped in here, that you are on that same path that I am. And I want to see you win in any way possible, because when people like us win, we're going to be sharing that information with more people. That means more people are going to win. More people are going to know how to get this information, right? So again, if you're not tapped in, this is why I want you to share. I want you to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel so that it can get out to more people, so we can start these conversations and start to build up our own legacy, right? Build up our own freedom, build up our own access to be able to serve people at a very, very high level and to have the resources to do it. So again, I hope this was super valuable for you. I appreciate everybody for tapping in, and much, much love.